If you were born between 1945 and 1965, Carl Jung would not start by asking how successful you became. He would ask something far more uncomfortable. What part of you had to disappear so you could survive, provide, behave, and be loved? Because according to Jung's psychology, the final great task of life is not to become younger, richer, louder, or more impressive. It is to become whole. And if you are now somewhere around your 60s, 70s, or early 80s, that question is no longer philosophical. It is personal. The life you built may be real. The family, the work, the sacrifices, the losses, the responsibilities, all real. But Jung believed that the second half of life asks for something the first half often ignores. Not more achievement, meaning, not more performance, truth, not more pretending, wholeness, and that is where your final spiritual mission begins. The truth, Jung did not hide. Let's be honest, before the internet puts Carl Jung in a velvet robe and hands him a crystal ball. Jung never wrote a secret prophecy saying, people born between 1945 and 1965 have this exact mission. That would be dramatic. It would also be false. Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist, born in 1875, one of the founders of depth psychology and the creator of analytical psychology. He worked closely with Sigmund Freud for a period, broke with him, and developed his own ideas about the unconscious, archetypes, dreams, symbols, the persona, the shadow, the self, and individuation. So the real question is not, did Jung mention your birth year? The real question is, if we apply Jung's verified ideas to the generation born between 1945 and 1965, what spiritual task appears? And this is where it gets interesting, because Jung wrote deeply about the second half of life. He believed that a person cannot live the later years using only the values of youth. He wrote in his essay, The Stages of Life, "We cannot live the afternoon of life according to the program of life's morning." That line lands differently when you are no longer in the morning. When you are young, life pushes you outward, build a career, find love, raise children, pay bills, survive, become someone. But later, the soul begins to ask a different question. Not what can I still prove, but what have I not yet understood? And that question can shake the whole house. Why 1945 to 1965 matters. If you were born in this range, you arrived during one of the most intense transitions in modern history. The Second World War ended in 1945. The Cold War shaped decades of anxiety. Television entered homes and changed family life. The space race turned the moon into a human destination. Civil rights movements, feminism, decolonization, Vietnam, rock music, mass consumer culture, personal computers, and later the internet changed the world you had to adapt to. Depending on where you lived, the details were different. But the pattern was similar. The world was rebuilding, accelerating, competing, modernizing, and telling people to be useful. Many of you were raised by parents who had known war, scarcity, strict religion, social pressure, or silence around emotions. So you learned early, don't complain, work hard, be respectable, do your duty, keep the family together, don't make a scene. And if you did make a scene, at least do it after the guests leave. That was the emotional technology of the time. No app, no wellness retreat, just a hard chair, a hot drink, and someone saying, you'll be fine. And many of you were fine, at least on the outside. But Jung would say the outside is not the whole person. The outside is often the persona. And the persona is useful. It helps us function in society. But if we confuse the mask with the soul eventually protests. Sometimes through anxiety, sometimes through depression, sometimes through resentment, sometimes through dreams, sometimes through a strange feeling that says, I did everything I was supposed to do. So why do I still feel unfinished? That feeling is not failure. That feeling may be the beginning of individuation. Jung's afternoon of life. Jung saw life as having stages. The first half is often about building the ego. You learn who you are. You establish yourself. You adapt to the world. You become a spouse, a worker, a parent, a citizen, a reliable human being who owns too many keys and cannot remember what half of them open. But the second half is different. In the afternoon of life, the old goals do not satisfy in the same way. The applause gets quieter. The children may leave. The body changes. Career identity weakens. Parents die, friends disappear, time becomes real, and the psyche starts asking questions the ego avoided. Who am I without my role? What did I bury? What have I never forgiven? What did I pass on without realizing it? What is asking to be born in me before I die? That is a heavy sentence. So let's breathe for a second. Jung was not saying older life is only decline. He was saying it has its own meaning. The afternoon is not a broken morning. It is a different part of the day. And if you try to live the afternoon by pretending it is still morning, you suffer. Because what worked at 30 may not work at 70. At 30, ambition can organize your life. At 70, ambition without meaning can feel empty. At 30, approval can motivate you. At 70, approval can start to feel like a cage with nice curtains. At 30, you may need to become someone. At 70, you may need to stop pretending to be someone you never truly were. That is not weakness. That is spiritual maturity. The first mission: remove the mask without losing your face. Jung used the word persona for the social mask we wear. The word comes from the idea of a mask used in performance. And that is perfect, because every human being performs. You perform at work, you perform in family, you perform in public, you perform when someone asks, "How are you?" And you say, "Fine," while your soul is sitting in the corner holding a suitcase. The persona is not bad. Without it, life becomes chaos. You cannot walk into a bank and express every unconscious impulse. Please do not test this. The problem begins when the persona becomes your prison. Maybe you became the strong one, the one who never breaks, the one who solves everyone else's problems, the one who makes money, the one who behaves, the one who stays quiet, the one who never needs help, the one who smiles even when something inside is collapsing. For decades, that mask may have helped you survive. But Jung would ask, who are you when nobody needs you to be useful? That question can feel strange, because if your identity was built around duty, peacekeeping, success, beauty, control, sacrifice, or being needed, then freedom can feel like emptiness at first. You finally have space, and the first thing you meet is silence, but silence is not empty. Silence is where the buried self starts knocking. Your first mission is not to destroy your persona, it is to stop worshipping it. You can still be a parent, a partner, a professional, a friend, but you are more than the role. The mask helped you belong to the world. Now the soul asks you to belong to yourself. The second mission: meet the shadow. Now comes the part everyone likes to talk about until it becomes personal: the shadow. In Jungian psychology, the shadow is not simply evil. It is the part of the personality we reject, deny, hide, or never develop. It can contain anger, but it can also contain creativity. It can contain jealousy, but it can also contain courage. It can contain selfishness, but it can also contain the healthy ability to say no. That is the funny thing about the shadow. It is not always a monster. Sometimes it is just your unlived life wearing a dark coat. And if you were born between 1945 and 1965, there is a good chance you were trained to push certain parts of yourself underground. Maybe anger was not allowed. Maybe grief was not discussed. Maybe desire was shameful. Maybe creativity was impractical. Maybe sensitivity was weak. Maybe spiritual hunger was mocked. Maybe rest was treated like laziness. So those parts did not disappear. They moved into the basement. And after 60 or 70 years, the basement is crowded. The shadow does not retire. It gets a senior discount and moves into the guest room. You know the shadow is active when your reaction is bigger than the situation. Someone makes a small comment, and suddenly you are furious. Someone lives freely, and you judge them too harshly. Someone rests, and you call them lazy. Someone expresses emotion, and you feel uncomfortable. Someone takes a risk, and you secretly resent them. Jung would not say, act out the shadow. He would say, become conscious of it. There is a huge difference. Meeting the shadow does not mean becoming cruel. It means understanding where your cruelty hides. It does not mean becoming selfish. It means noticing where your false goodness has become resentment. It does not mean blaming everyone. It means finally telling the truth about what hurts. Your second mission is to stop being secretly ruled by what you refuse to see, because what remains unconscious often controls the room, even when everyone is pretending it does not. The third mission: listen to dreams, symbols, and the unlived life. Jung took dreams seriously, not as random nonsense, not as fortune cookies, not as magic instructions from a cosmic customer service department. He saw dreams as meaningful expressions of the unconscious. Dreams speak in images: a house, a road, water, a child, a stranger, a dead relative, a locked room, a train you missed, a suitcase you forgot. There is our suitcase again. Jung believed symbols can reveal what the conscious mind does not yet understand. His final project for general readers, Man and His Symbols, was published in 1964, after his death. That matters because it sits right inside your birth window. While the modern world was getting louder, Jung was still trying to explain why inner images matter. The world said, look outside, buy, work, win, consume, keep up. The psyche said, look inside, remember, integrate, become whole. If you are in the later chapter of life, dreams may become especially powerful, not because you are losing your mind, but because the unconscious may be trying to complete the story. Old memories return. People from childhood appear. Places you thought you forgot become vivid. You may dream of childhood homes, old schools, oceans, storms, weddings, funerals, animals, stairs, doors, and rooms you have never entered. Jung would ask, what is the psyche showing you? Not every dream needs dramatic interpretation. Sometimes a dream is just the mind digesting life. But recurring symbols deserve attention. Write them down. Notice the feeling. Ask what part of you is being represented. The third mission is to stop dismissing the inner world as nonsense. You have spent decades responding to outer demands. Now the inner world asks to be heard. The fourth mission: claim what you postponed. Every life contains sacrifice. There is no adult life without trade-offs. You chose one road and 10 roads vanished. You raised children and certain dreams waited. You worked to survive and parts of your creativity went quiet. You stayed in a marriage or left one, and either path cost you something. You cared for parents. You buried people. You endured disappointments no one applauded. Jung understood that unlived life has power. He warned that what parents do not live consciously can affect their children. That does not mean you should suddenly become reckless. Your final mission is not to buy a motorcycle, text your ex at midnight, and call it individuation. That is not Jung. That is a midlife crisis with better lighting. Claiming the unlived life means asking, what still belongs to me? Maybe you never painted. Paint. Maybe you never apologized. Apologize. Maybe you never studied what fascinated you. Study. Maybe you never allowed yourself tenderness. Practice tenderness. Maybe you never told your real story. Tell it somewhere safe. Maybe you always lived as the responsible one, and now you need to learn joy without guilt. That is not selfish. That may be medicine. But there is a trap. The unlived life cannot be recovered by destroying the life you did live. You do not heal the past by creating new wreckage. You heal by bringing consciousness to what was abandoned. Sometimes that means action. Sometimes it means grief. Sometimes it means accepting that certain doors are closed while noticing that other doors are still quietly open. Your fourth mission is not to become young again. It is to stop abandoning yourself now. The fifth mission: heal the family pattern. Jung studied complexes, those emotionally charged patterns in the psyche that can shape behavior without our full awareness. Early in his career at the Burghölzli Psychiatric Hospital in Zurich, he worked with word association experiments to study how hidden emotional material affected response times and reactions. That sounds clinical, but in ordinary life, you know exactly what a complex feels like. Someone says one sentence, and suddenly you are 12 years old again. A tone of voice, a holiday dinner, a sibling comment, a child's decision, a partner's silence, and the past walks into the room wearing today's clothes. If you were born between 1945 and 1965, you may carry family material from generations that did not speak openly. War trauma, poverty, migration, religious fear, addiction, emotional neglect, strict gender roles, secrets, shame. The old family rule may have been, survive first, feel later, but later eventually arrives, and sometimes later is you. This is one of the deepest spiritual missions of older adulthood, to stop handing unconscious pain to the next generation. Not perfectly. No one does this perfectly. The goal is not to become the saint of the family group chat. The goal is consciousness. You notice the pattern. You name it. You soften it. You refuse to continue it where you can. Maybe your family avoided emotion, so you learn to speak gently. Maybe your family used control, so you practice trust. Maybe your family punished difference, so you bless the younger person who lives differently. Maybe your family never apologized, so you become the first one who can say, "I was wrong." That sentence can break a spell. Your fifth mission is to become the place where an old pattern loses power. The sixth mission: move from ego to self. Jung's idea of the self is not the same as ego. The ego is the center of conscious identity. It says, "I am this person. This is my name. This is my story. These are my opinions. This is my coffee mug," and everyone knows it. The self, in Jungian psychology, points to a deeper wholeness of the psyche. It includes conscious and unconscious life. It is not just who you think you are. It is the larger pattern trying to form through you. Jung called the process of becoming more whole individuation. And individuation is not individualism. It does not mean, "I do whatever I want." It means becoming less divided, less false, less possessed by collective expectations, less controlled by unconscious wounds, more able to stand in the truth of your whole life. This is why Jung was interested in mandalas. He saw mandalas as symbols of order, balance, and psychic wholeness. Not because drawing circles magically fixes your taxes, although if it did, humanity would be unstoppable. The point is symbolic. When life feels fragmented, the psyche often seeks a center. In the second half of life, the question becomes, what is my center now? Not career. That may change. Not beauty. That changes. Not social status. That can vanish overnight. Not even family role. Children grow, partners change, people die. So what remains? For Jung, the later life task is to relate to the deeper center of the psyche, to the self, to meaning, to the mystery of being alive. Your sixth mission is to stop living as a bundle of reactions and begin living from a deeper center. The seventh mission: become an elder, not just an older person. Modern culture worships youth, smooth skin, fast opinions, constant novelty. The algorithm loves the new, but the human soul needs the old. Not old as in bitter, not old as in frozen in nostalgia, old as in rooted. An elder is not simply someone with more birthdays. An elder is someone who has metabolized experience into wisdom. There is a difference. An older person says, "I suffered, so you should suffer too." An elder says, "I suffered, so let me help you suffer less." An older person controls. An elder blesses. An older person repeats trauma. An elder transforms it into guidance. An older person says, "In my day, everything was better." An elder says, "Here is what we learned, here is what we got wrong, and here is what you must discover for yourself." That is rare and desperately needed. If you were born between 1945 and 1965, you have witnessed an extraordinary bridge in history. You knew a world before smartphones. Many of you knew handwritten letters, landline phones, physical maps, printed photographs, and long silences where nobody could reach you. Then you watched the digital world arrive and swallow attention whole. That gives you a perspective younger people do not have. But perspective becomes wisdom only when it is offered without contempt. Your mission is not to shame the young. Your mission is to remember what matters and transmit it with love. Tell stories, share skills, speak truth, protect beauty, encourage courage, bless freedom, admit mistakes, laugh at yourself, especially that last one. If you cannot laugh at yourself after 60, the shadow will do it for you. The final spiritual mission. So what is the final spiritual mission Jung's work points toward? It is not to escape aging. It is not to become perfect. It is not to pretend you have no regrets. It is not to float above ordinary life with a mystical expression and extremely comfortable linen clothing. The mission is wholeness, to take back the rejected parts, to loosen the mask, to meet the shadow, to listen to the inner world, to heal what can be healed, to grieve what cannot be changed, to stop making the next generation carry what you refuse to face, to become an elder, to become more truthful before the end than you were at the beginning. That is a powerful mission, and it is not small. Some people think the final chapter of life is about shrinking. Jung would challenge that. The body may slow down, but the psyche may deepen. The outer world may get smaller, but the inner world can become vast. There are people who become more bitter with age. There are also people who become luminous, not because life was easy, because they finally stopped lying to themselves. That is the difference. Bitterness says, "My pain entitles me to close." Wisdom says, "My pain invites me to open differently." The final mission is to become conscious enough that your life does not end as a collection of reflexes. It ends as a more complete person, not flawless, complete, not untouched by darkness, integrated, not young, alive. 7 Jungian questions for your life now. Question 1. What role did I play so well that I forgot it was a role? Question 2. What quality in other people irritates me because I have rejected it in myself? Question 3. What dream, memory, symbol, or image keeps returning? Question 4. What part of my unlived life still asks for attention? Question 5. What family pattern no longer has to continue through me? Question 6. Who needs my apology, my forgiveness, my blessing, or my honest boundary? Question 7. If I stopped trying to impress the world, what would become essential? Do not rush those questions. They are not motivational quotes, they are doors, and some doors open slowly, but if one of them stings, pay attention. The soul often knocks where the ego says, "Nothing to see here." If you want to go deeper, I left a simple Jung reading list and these reflection questions in the description. Start with the stages of life, then man and his symbols. And if you want Jung's personal reflections, look at memories, dreams, reflections. Read slowly, write honestly, And remember the real message. If you were born between 1945 and 1965, your final mission is not to disappear quietly into age. It is to become whole enough that your presence becomes a blessing.